When investigators found Ted Weiher's body in that forest trailer, they discovered something that made no sense. He had starved to death. But surrounding him were dozens of unopened canned meals, matches, and a working propane tank. Not a single can was opened. Not a single match was struck. Today, we're diving into 4 disappearances that left behind scenes so inexplicable, they've haunted investigators for decades. If you're easily unsettled, you might want to watch this one with the lights on. And if you appreciate a good mystery, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because we're just getting started. That forest trailer is just the final piece of our first mystery. Today, we're examining 4 cases that left investigators with more questions than answers. A wrong turn in the California mountains that ended in tragedy. 5 children who vanished during a Christmas Eve fire. A pilot's final transmission with 17 seconds of unexplained sounds, and 3 lighthouse keepers who disappeared, leaving behind only an untouched meal and a mysterious logbook entry. Let's start in Yuba City, California, February 24, 1978. The local community knew Ted Weiher, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Gary Mathias, and Jack Madruga as the boys. All in their 20s and 30s, they shared a special bond. Despite their intellectual disabilities, they lived independently and never missed their local basketball team's games. That Thursday night started like any other. Ted's mother watched them pile into Jack's turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego. They bought snacks at a local store. The receipt was later found in the car. They were headed to a game just 50 miles away, a drive they'd made dozens of times. But something went terribly wrong. When none of them returned home that night, their families weren't immediately worried. Police launched a search that would soon become one of California's most perplexing investigations. On February 28th, a Forest Service worker spotted something unusual, a car parked on a snow-covered road in the Plumas National Forest. It was their Mercury Montego 70 miles off course in the opposite direction from their destination. Here's where it gets strange. The car was intact, no damage, half tank of gas. The keys were gone, but inside they found maps, cigarettes, and all their wallets. Everything suggested they'd simply stopped and walked away. But why would 5 men, some without proper winter clothing, abandon a perfectly good car in freezing temperatures? 4 months passed. Then on June 4th, a Forest Service worker made a shocking discovery inside a trailer 19 miles from the car. Inside lay Ted Weiher's body. He'd survived for possibly 8 to 13 weeks, based on his beard growth and weight loss. But here's the detail that haunts investigators to this day. The trailer contained enough food to feed all 5 men for a year. Matches, heating materials, propane. None of it had been touched. Ted had starved to death, surrounded by food. Over the next few weeks, they found 3 more bodies scattered across terrain so difficult that experienced search and rescue workers struggled to reach them. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, was never found. But as baffling as 5 men vanishing into the wilderness might be, our next case suggests that sometimes being inside your own home isn't any safer. Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sauter family home was filled with holiday excitement. George and Jenny Sauter had 10 children, and 5 of them, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, had begged to stay up late to play with their new toys. Around 10 p.m., Jenny Sauter told them it was time for bed. No one knew these would be the last words she'd ever speak to her children. At 1:30 a.m., Jenny was awakened by the sound of something hitting the roof. Then she noticed smoke. Within minutes, the house was engulfed in flames. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children escaped. But the 5 children upstairs seemed trapped. As firefighters sifted through the ashes, they made a discovery that defied explanation. There were no remains, none. Not a single bone, not a tooth, nothing. Fire Chief Morris couldn't explain it. Even crematoriums, which burn at much higher temperatures for longer periods, leave bone fragments. The official explanation, that the fire had been hot enough to completely consume 5 bodies, was challenged by multiple experts. But that was just the beginning of the inconsistencies. The family soon discovered their phone line had been cut, not burned. Witnesses came forward reporting a strange car parked along the road in the days before the fire, watching the house. A man claimed he'd seen children being driven away in a car as the house burned. For years, George and Jenny Sauter refused to believe their children had died. They converted the site into a garden and erected a billboard offering a reward for information. Tips came in from across the country, including a photograph mailed to them in the 1960s showing a young man who bore a striking resemblance to their missing son, Louis. The Sauter children's disappearance remains one of America's most haunting mysteries. But our next case takes us from the ground to the sky, where a young pilot's final radio transmission would leave aviation experts speechless. October 21, 1978, Bass Strait, Australia. 20-year-old Frederick Valentich was making a routine training flight in his Cessna 182L. He had over 150 hours of flight time and perfect visibility conditions. At 7:06 p.m., he contacted air traffic control at Melbourne with an unusual request. "Melbourne, this is Delta Sierra Juliet. Is there any aircraft below 5,000? Delta Sierra Juliet, no known aircraft below 5,000. Delta Sierra Juliet, IM seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000. Delta Sierra Juliet, what type of aircraft is it? Delta Sierra Juliet, I cannot affirm. It is for bright. It seems to be like landing lights." For the next 6 minutes, Valentich described something that should have been impossible. A craft with a shiny metal surface and green light, performing aerial maneuvers that defied physics, hovering, vanishing, reappearing directly overhead. His final words, documented in Air Safety Investigation Branch Report DSJ-File B 79/1205. "It is not an aircraft, it is..." Then 17 seconds of metallic scraping sounds. Then silence. Australia launched its largest air-sea rescue operation since World War II. No wreckage was ever found, no oil slicks, nothing. The investigation confirmed. Weather conditions were perfect that night. Valentich was an experienced pilot. His aircraft was in perfect condition. No other aircraft were scheduled in that area. The metallic sounds on the recording couldn't be explained by any known aircraft malfunction. But as inexplicable as Valentich's disappearance was, our final case might be even more disturbing. December 15, 1900. The Flannan Isles, a remote cluster of islands off Scotland's western coast. The lighthouse there was crucial for ships navigating treacherous waters. It was manned by 3 experienced keepers, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. On this particular morning, something was wrong. Ships had reported the lighthouse dark for several nights. When relief keeper Joseph Moore arrived on December 26th, he found a scene that still haunts lighthouse services to this day. The main door was locked. Inside, the clock had stopped. In the kitchen, a chair was overturned at the table where a meal lay untouched. The logbook's final entry noted, "Severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years." It was signed by Thomas Marshall on December 15th. But here's what makes this case truly inexplicable. Weather records for December 15th showed calm seas and clear skies. 2 sets of oilskin waterproofs were missing from their hooks. The 3rd set remained. This meant one keeper had ventured out into whatever happened, completely unprotected. Northern Lighthouse Board investigators pieced together what they could. All 3 men were experienced. They knew every procedure, every safety protocol. Whatever drove them to leave their post must have been extraordinary. But no bodies were ever found, no signs of violence, no evidence of what could have made 3 seasoned lighthouse keepers abandon their post, leaving a meal uneaten on the table. 4 cases, 16 lives, all vanished without a trace. The Yuba County 5 who drove in the wrong direction and died in places they shouldn't have reached. The 5 Sauter children who vanished from a burning house that consumed nothing but itself. Frederick Valentich, who reported something impossible before disappearing into clear skies. And 3 lighthouse keepers who stepped into calm weather and never returned. Sometimes there are no answers, only questions that grow deeper the more you look into them. If you found this video interesting, hit that like button and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, which of these cases will keep you up at night? Until next time, remember, reality is often stranger than anything we could imagine.